Writing is it's really difficult but also really beautiful in a similar way, I think, to teaching, because I feel like it really helps solidify how we think about something. I think it really every time I write, it furthers my understanding on something or an understanding of myself. And so that's something that I never want to give up to our um anything, to any AI. Find where your sacred space is that AI is not allowed to enter. Putting different sort of charts into different sorts of dashboards, um, that that's never been where that's never been how I frame my service to my clients. The way that I have always kind of my competitive strength has always been in creating custom solutions, thoughtful custom solutions for clients, that can't that where the dashboards and out of box solutions are not working for them.
Hello, friends. Welcome to another episode of the Work On It podcast. And boy, do we have a good episode for you today because Shirley Wu is back for part two. Welcome.
Hello, thank you so much for having me back.
Well, we had a lot of topics on the last show, and clearly we did not go through all of them. So we had to do a part two. I'm excited to be talking to you today because I know that I'm sure there's going to be a part 3 and 4 in the future because there's just so much. I have sheets of paper to talk about all these questions.
Thank you so much for preparing so much material.
You are I want to say a visualization master extraordinaire. Like, you are somebody that is very good about bringing stories to life with the help of visualization. And we talked about on the last show, we don't need to kind of rehash a lot of this stuff, but like, you are the person I would look at as the model for building a lot of these kind of interactive online or computerized visualization that present data in very, very interesting kind of in a storytelling way. I'm curious. So from the work that you're doing, and because a lot of them are fairly elaborate, like we talked about, like the Hamilton visualization, there's the movies as flowers, which is great. When do you know that your work on a specific visualization project is done? Because it seems like you would be in this constant state of like, okay, but like one more thing, I can tweak this, I can add this one more thing. When do you know that it's done?
Oh, I'm so guilty of this. I appreciate this question. So, it's funny you mentioned Hamilton because that was the one where I just kept going and going, and I was like, I can, because I think every creator, designer, developer can relate to this. That like you as the person that is so close to the project can see everything wrong with the project. Um, and like every little bug or every little thing that's not up to your standard is what's going to bother you. And I think that Hamilton was actually the project that taught me that at a certain point, nobody's going to notice but me. Like nobody's going to like notice the little edge case bugs. um I don't know if I have like a metric for figuring out when it's done, other than like, I think it's when I get to the point where I notice that I am tweaking and nitpicking things so small that nobody other than me would notice, is when I ship it. And it's so funny because even on my last client project, my clients, they had a launch date, and I think 2 weeks before the launch date, they were like, Shirley, we don't care about that like little tweak because nobody's gonna notice it. And I was like, nobody's gonna consciously notice it, but they're gonna notice that there's something subconsciously like off about it, and it's all these little attention to detail that's gonna like make or break an experience and make a person feel like it was a good experience. I think that's it. I think it's like once I get to a point where the tweaks are no longer about like, is it going to make or break the person's experience, in a even in a subtle way, that's where I stop.
Yeah, it's interesting because that kind of perfection paralysis is a thing. I know for myself, when you build a project and you start noticing these little things that, as you said, you are almost guaranteed that anybody outside looking at that project will not even care. They're like, oh, this is great. I love this. This is fantastic. But I look at it as like, oh, that alignment is just off. I see the margins just like not quite putting where it needs to be. And overcoming that sometimes is hard, but I like the framing of at the end of the day, you have to ship. Like you can just keep refining it forever. You can just keep working and working and working. It will never see the light of day.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And actually, what you say reminds me that I think where I ship is when I fixes all of the bugs that I can find, and that my clients can find, and that what is left is the gap between my vision of the final product versus like where it is, because no viewer, no reader is going to ever know that that gap exists, and that's I think where I kind of call it done.
Also, something that I want to know is because you are building a lot of these very elaborate visualizations, surely as you are working through them, you sometimes think like, wow, this is going to be like massive for the people that will see this. This is going to be so exciting. It's going to be great. Because that comes naturally when you ship things, because you have this kind of preconceived notion that's like, I'm working very hard on this and people will get excited about it. But surely sometimes like things happen where like people are just like, whatever. Like it did not really, it's not the level of excitement that you thought it would be from the work that you've done. Have you experienced that kind of stuff when you work really, really hard on something and then you're like, wow, the reception is totally not what I expected it to be?
All the time. All the time, so much so that I've stopped having expectation just to protect my ego. Because I think um you know, I think that as a designer developer, my forte is not in UX research, or like my forte is not in like deep going out to market and figuring out what people's needs are. That's something that I'm actively working on. Figuring out if there's like an expert that we can bring in to figure that part out. But I'm guilty until like maybe the last 2 years or so. I've been guilty of just like especially for personal projects. For client projects, like the client has an idea, so it's usually their responsibility to make sure that it reaches the right audience. But for my own personal projects, I've stopped having any expectation of how it's going to go, because I don't do the upfront like research into if people actually want to see this or not. Um, yeah, most of my it's kind of like that irony, right? Where you spend like 3 months full time working on a big elaborate thing and nobody cares, but then like the thing that you release that you worked on in like a week is like what people are obsessed over. I've stopped trying to figure that out.
Yeah, no, I have a very dumb example on that one. And that is, I, as a part of my hobby when I have free time, whenever that happens, is putting, have you ever seen Seinfeld, the show?
No,
Okay, well, the
no.
gist of it is like I take these short clips, like less than a minute, and basically remove the audio and overlay if it's like what would be if you worked in tech and this like the 90s
Oh, that's
show.
great.
It's basically like memes, right? Like so you have this like Kramer complaining about like Kubernetes or some like some stupid stuff like this. And one of the things that basically happened is like once I actually like I literally had this idea like in 2021, like it was like everybody was locked in during the pandemic and everybody going crazy with these ideas. And I was like, oh, I'll just put it on Twitter, whatever. And it just like it just exploded. It went viral. Like people just like, oh my God, this is like so freaking hilarious. And I was like, I put like 5 minutes of effort into that. And then at some point I was like, well, people clearly enjoy this. I'll put a couple more. And then there's like crickets. And you're like, I actually spent time thinking through this and nothing. Like it's as dumb as it gets. But like it's true that sometimes it's hard to gauge because you can work very, very hard on the project and get it in front of people. And then you get crickets, you get no reaction. And then sometimes it got whipped up over a weekend because it's like, oh, this is kind of a cool idea I had. And it's like, let's see what happens when people are losing their minds over it. It's like, go figure.
And actually, this is a really good reminder of a conversation I was having with a friend of like, if we could, like, conversely, if we turn this around and look at it from like a different perspective, it feels very, very freeing because the reward is not tied to time and effort. Because I think that like, I think about this a lot as someone that works independently, that, the first way that we charge clients is by time. And whether that's hourly or daily or weekly, it's something by time. And then I think the golden place that we want to get to is charging by value. Um, And I've been thinking a lot about like, how do we like separate this? Like, I think, especially, I don't know if it's because of the Industrial Revolution, but like in America, in a lot of European countries and Western countries, we have such an obsession with time and effort, and that being tied to price. And I think also about how. And the place that I think about this a lot is in art history, actually. And the pieces that we celebrate in Western art history is like in the Renaissance, it's like these big, massive, realistic paintings that take months and or years for like dozens of hands to like complete, and that's what we celebrate. But then when I look at like Chinese art, like the masters that we celebrate in Chinese art, I'm much less familiar with Chinese art, but from my understanding of it is we kind of celebrate people that are like five brush, like how few brush strokes can we get to express a scenery, or like how expressive can we get each brushstroke to be. And then you see like these masters of like Chinese ink paintings, and they'll finish it in 5 minutes. But it's kind of like that answer when somebody's like, oh, how long did that take you? And it's like 5 minutes plus a lifetime. And so it's not about the individual amount of time, but the fact that a lifetime of experience gets you that like painting in 5 hours, and that is deeply valuable. And so and this was in the context, I was talking to a friend about like art in the context of AI, of like now that AI kind of has made things that look hard to do take only a few seconds. Does that mean we will maybe get to a place where we decouple value from time, or price from time, and we price by value instead? That's my optimism, the very little optimism I have.
You're absolutely right in the sense that it's the same idea with a lot of the trades, right? When people complain about like, oh, I got a plumber to my house, they were there for like 15 minutes and they charged me $600. It's like, yes, but it's the 15 minutes that they spent a lifetime knowing exactly what to tweak and where and how,
Yeah,
that they
you're
spend
right.
15 minutes, right? Like that's, it's not because, oh, like you charge them for like it's $600 an hour. Like it's not the case. It's the experience that you're paying for. Like, sure, you can find something cheaper that somebody's going to spend 3 hours doing this for $100. And are they going to do like a worse job? Or are they like, you don't know, but that experience costs. And I like that idea of decoupling time from value you deliver. And now in the era of AI, like you alluded to something that I want to dig into more, and that is, I think there's a lot of kind of efforts going into the fact that AI is going to be the time saver. AI, right? Like you can have AI generate transcripts for this podcast, which is kind of nice. Not gonna lie, like not having to listen for an hour and transcribing everything by hand is great. Like it's a utility use, right? You throwing AI at some coding problem and like scaffold things that are boring, like tests, right? That allows me to do more important things, like actually focusing on the value of the product. I think is kind of great. Um, but it also comes with a lot of risks that people see, right? Because there's especially kind of in the art community, there's this hesitation that AI is going to swoop in, and now all of a sudden art is irrelevant because anybody can just type in a prompt and generate whatever art they want, and boom, done. Where do you see that going?
Oh yeah. Okay. So I should start by saying that I'm I feel like I'm a in tech a pretty late adopter of AI. I started using it very seriously maybe 2 years ago, and I've started to kind of like figure out what my boundaries are. And my personal boundaries are I will never use um, uh, my ethical boundary is I will never use anything trained on stolen labor. So I will never use any image generation, video generation. Um, and then there's more things I'm still trying to figure out around the environmental impacts, exploited labor, and I think a lot of this discussion about AI colonialism. I'm still trying to work through that part. So this is what I want to preface by saying is like. I'm still trying to figure out my boundaries of where I use AI and where I don't. But something that I've been thinking a lot about is the art side that you mentioned. Um, uh, and even if I personally don't use AI like for image generation, there's, like you said, many people that are going to use it. And so what does that mean, like culturally, as like and societally as a whole, is something that I've been mulling over for like the last 2 years. And I think the working conclusion that I'm arriving at is, I keep thinking a lot about the camera and what camera did to the art field. And how before camera, I think a lot of the art pieces that live on and are archived in like museums and other cultural institutions are very much like as close to photorealism as possible, because we didn't have a camera, so the value wasn't capturing a portrait or like a scenery. And then as soon as the camera came in, and I think there was like an existential crisis for a generation or two, and but then after that we start getting really really interesting work of like we start getting, I think, like and my art history is fuzzy, but like we start getting abstract art. I think we start getting impressionism. This is all out of order, but surrealism. And so I think it took a generation or two, but I think that there was like people that really started to, I think, take advantage of the fact that they were freed from having to do photorealistic things. um I think that there's it's not a one-to-one correlation between camera and AI, because the camera never trained on stolen artworks. But if we just kind of temporarily put that part aside, what I'm really excited for is how people will, um, what kind of art people will create in reaction to AI. Now that AI has freed up, the most time consuming things, what will they be making now? And also, I remain hopeful, because if we think about how the camera gave everyday people the access to capture photorealistic or like capture moments, but art never went away. Art is still a thing that people pursue, like as creative expression. And so I'm really hopeful that even if AI takes away a lot of jobs now, um, and that art will persist and it will just look different.
Yeah, and I mean, even speaking for myself, I look at the current art landscape, like I see people actually put effort into things like drawing and having their own art style, right? Like one of the folks that I follow is Sam Does Arts, Sam Yang from, I think he's in Toronto. He's like an art, yeah, he's like an artist, YouTuber, and he actually documents his process. He talks about like how he works and he shows it. He has an art book where he talks about his like sketches, and to me, that part of the process is much more interesting than saying like, oh, how did you make this? Like, oh, I put this prompt and here's how I tweaked this prompt. And it's like, uh I don't know. Like to me, like I get where a lot of folks are coming from, but the entire process of art creation to me is much more interesting than somebody kind of putting a text prompt and be like, here, produce me an image, there you go, there's art. I'm like,
Yeah, and I think that's also something that's really interesting to me. I fully agree with you about the process being. I think the process has always been what's really interesting to a lot of people. I think a lot of us always want to see like behind the scenes of how somebody thought through something. I also think it's really interesting how AI has already started making people shift more to like physical art or like performance art or things that are hard to recreate with like AI art and video generation. There's a article I read about AI and art that has lived rent free in my mind for like 4 months. It is, and I want to read a passage from you that that's the passage that I still keep thinking about. It is Ken Liu's piece for Big Think. And it's called the these are big words, cinematograph, the noematograph, and the future of AI art. And there's a passage in there where they say, and I quote, this suggests that AI as an artistic medium based around playful intersubjectivity will be more about process than outcome, like you just said, more about participation than consumption, more about the doing rather than the beholding. Some of the best AI art experiences are about what the AI prompts in you rather than what you prompt the AI to do. enjoying AI art will not be like reading a book or watching a movie, but more like having a meal with your friends or playing a board game. It is irreducibly ephemeral and personal, just as subjectivity itself is. It appeals to a person, not people. And I find this really exciting.
That's actually a very fascinating framing, that it becomes this personalized thing for you, not for the general public, because you might be curious about something. You might be thinking about a concept that nobody else maybe has in mind or nobody else actually cares about. And that's fine. And this is what that enables.
And what does that look like as we go forward? I'm not sure yet. But I think the little asterisk edit I want to make on that passage is one of the things I am concerned about is how isolating all these AI tools are. Of like even just the fact that I when I used to work at a company, I used to pair program with a person, and now I can pair program with Claude. When and my favorite thing is still to rubber dog off of my husband. And this, ChatGPT threatens even that is like now I'm like, oh, I don't want to bother him when he's busy. Let me just ask ChatGPT. So one of the things that I try really hard is to not use them in isolating ways. So the thing that I want to kind of edit that passage is like, how do we make it appeal to a group of people and not people in general?
That's certainly one of the interesting domains too, because we see that there was also an article that came out I believe, like a few days ago. They were talking about how a lot of the AI based applications that pretend to be like your AI friend are actually driving this, exactly what you just mentioned, that isolation of like, well, you're not talking to a person, you're talking to basically auto, like the predictive text on steroids. Like that's what it is, right? And like how do we rationalize the societal impact of that, and the fact that people don't talk to people, they talk to this AI, because building social relationships is hard. Building an
Yeah.
actual connection with somebody and building that trust to go and be able to confide in them about specific challenges that you're encountering in life, specific things. It's hard, right? It takes a lot of time. With these tools, basically people just go online and be like, oh, I'm having this problem, blah blah blah, blah. Like, what do you think? And then the AI just spits out an answer, and then there you go. There's your interaction.
Yeah, and you're precisely right. And there's that actually reminds me of two things. The first is working in data visualization for a long time. I start making quite a few friends in data journalism, and they're increasingly. I mean, not increasing. They are extremely, extremely concerned about the state of truth these days, and how social media already gave us like little like what's it called not vortexes. They get. Thank you. Yeah, yeah, yeah. The bubbles of you can just find your little bubble, and everything within it will agree with you. And an AI has a risk of doing even more than that. Of like the AI, it can just agree with you, and you're depending on which one you're using, it can just continue to um, agree with you instead of challenging you, which is what a friend might do, a family member might do, is challenge you. And that actually reminds me of a second thing I listened to recently is a um, podcast by Trevor Noah. And he was interviewing the author of a book called The Anxious Generation. I don't know if you've ever heard it or heard of the book. And something and I'm not going to do a very good job of summarizing the podcast, but the part that it reminds me of, our conversation reminds me of, is the author was saying something like, when we and he was talking about like children and how children are brought up now versus how they were brought up in the 70s and 80s. And he was saying that when you remove interaction, let's say like playground interaction between kids, that's where kids used to learn how to negotiate, learn how to deal with deferring opinions. And then somewhere in like I think the 90s or something, and I don't remember if it's called safe parenting, but like there started to be like there's uh, adults, parents that started to swoop in when there's like a conflict between two kids. Um, and the podcast was talking about how that's what creates a generation of people that are unable to solve interpersonal conflict, and they instead look to authority instead to solve those conflicts. And then well, the podcast took it a step further, and I kind of agree, which is they were saying that that's how you create a generation that is primed for authoritarian regime. Then we go into a lot of politics. But the part that I think is really relevant for what we're talking about is, um, I think the same thing, even more exacerbated if we, rely on AI for these, is like we stop learning how to communicate with each other.
Yeah, and it's also like we don't need to look far for that. Like think about like technical problems that sometimes you run into, like say like you're using Claude or you're using ChatGPT or any of the modern tools, right? And it's sometimes you'd ask it to be like, can you like show me how this code works? And it would give you something, and then you'd actually say like, that is stupid. That's not it. And it's like, oh, you're absolutely right. And let me do you're and it's like, right. It's like, and because like if you take this foundational look at it, it's like, well, that makes sense. It's an algorithm. It's not a person on the other side. Of course, it's going to tell me I'm right because I'm the user. I'm guiding and steering it. But that does present the danger that you just said, where it's like, oh, I'm thinking X, Y, Z, and it can be like, oh, you're absolutely right. X, Y, and Z are absolutely true, and you're like, is it? I don't know. Like, to what degree are you going to trust that system to do the right thing, the ethical thing, and the thing that actually does not have negative consequences? That is hard to predict, right?
Yeah, and also, you would never say to someone in real life, that is stupid, right? Like,
Well, and and actually, sometimes to take a very kind of somewhat contrarian take on it, you have to have friends that you can share an idea and they tell you like, that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. What are you even doing?
this is true.
Right?
This
Like,
is true.
you need to have that friend that's going to tell you like, are you nuts? Like, what are you even saying, man? AI is not going to do that. They're going to like, oh, great, yeah, that sounds like a good
Yeah.
idea. You're
Yeah, and I think that speaking of like AI telling you everything you want to hear, my friend just sent me an article of I feel like I think a few days ago an article came out about how several media outlets investigated and they realized that Grok 4 references Elon Musk's own X post when asked about controversial topics. That is the ultimate what I am so paranoid about with these giant tech companies monopolizing, oligarchizing, the like the three or four major platforms we have. Um, yeah, we can talk forever about. I'm so paranoid.
yeah. So, from your perspective, how do we fight against this kind of isolationism of our societal like fabric, right? Because you're right, that does bring a degree of isolation because again, you don't need to go look for friends. You don't need to build a relationship. Just install the app and boom, you have an AI friend. Like friend, I use this in quotes. But how do we fight against this? Like, how do we actually bring people together and help them understand that this is not the same as actually having friends? It's not the same as actually having trustworthy relationships with other people.
Oh, okay. That's such a big question that I feel 0% equipped to answer in any sort of meaningful way.
I don't think any of
Um,
us are, to be honest.
but if I was to take a stab at it, something that I also think about a lot is that American the Amer our culture, the American culture is based on independent, like individualism, and we take pride on like the independence and the American individualism, and I think that's really great in a lot of ways. But I also think that that is part. I think part of our cultural fabric is also what is leading to a lot of us turning in into like inwards towards AI. Like I don't think this is a tech problem. This is a cultural fabric problem of like I think we And also because I contrast it to where my family comes from and where I grew up, which was in China and Japan, and that's a very collectivist society. And I think I think at least in Japan, there's a 2 year delay in like adopting any sort of tech. So I haven't started to really see the effects of AI on this, um, uh, but I do think that it's very much a like how do we tell people friends are great if they don't even have a great support network to start with because of like the individualism that's so deeply ingrained in us. I think it's a societal thing.
Yeah, and this is where I think I also agree with the sense that we can't just throw more tech at the problem, because
Yeah.
that's, as for people working in tech, that's kind of the natural things. Like, oh, if only we had a different app that allows you to connect to other friends, actual real people. We can call it real people TM. Got trademarked on this podcast, but like this is the kind of stuff where it's like it's not necessarily about the tech. It's not about having yet another app. It's not about yet another website where you can communicate or anything like that. It's more about having that actual cultural shift of like, you need to talk to your neighbors. Go
Yeah.
talk to the
Oh
people you live
yeah.
near. Like, if you think about it, right? Like I similar to what you just described, I grew up in a culture that is somewhat opposite of where I am now. And it's very much like you talk to your neighbors. You have to ask for something, you go to your neighbor, you ask them, oh, your neighbor is doing something, you go to their barbecue and you meet them, or, even though you don't really interact with them. Here, it's like, how many of us do you know that you can say like confidently, like, do you know what your neighbors are doing? Just like, what do they work each, for example, like something like very basic. Like, you don't need to know like the deep insights about their lives, like basic stuff like this. And I'm almost certain that a lot of folks have no idea.
Oh yeah. I have very little clue. I have heard of this mythical concept called a block party.
Yeah, me
Um,
too. Never seen it. I have never seen it.
I think they still exist in certain parts of Brooklyn. And I think I might have passed by it like once or twice and it was very wholesome. Um, but yeah, I think that that podcast, the Ancient Generation podcast, I think they do delve into this a little bit. Um, but I also love what you bring up with tech is not actually the answer to most things. I think I was talking to my friend who had just quit his tech job, and he was like, I want to work do something in the climate space because like and I'm so concerned about all of the environmental things. But and then he was like, but it turns out if you want to actually enact change, it's not in tech, it's in policy, it's in just really hard long term work. And I think that sometimes living and breathing tech a lot means that we forget that change is not immediate and change is a really, really long, hard work. I feel like I said something really obvious, but
No,
we
it's
can
true
move on.
though. It is absolutely true, because we are so accustomed to, oh, you need a change, just push to prod, right? Like, just commit a change, boom, it's
Yeah.
live. It doesn't work
Yeah.
that way with people. You can't just, tell your friend, it's like, from now on you're thinking this way, and they're like, okay, switch flip. And like, that doesn't happen. Like, yeah, it's a societal shift that I think at some point we will have to undergo and understand that people are still at the forefront. People are still, it's all about the people. It's less about the technology those people use.
And I think that I want to add to a question you did not ask, but I feel like was tangential to the question you just asked, which is like, how do we, at least not about the isolation, but about the part of a few big companies controlling our access to information, and I've started to do the research of how to like build our own local AI servers, and I'm really really hopeful with like all of the local open source or sorry with all of the open source models that are out there, and can we adopt that in the long term. I do feel like majority of the population will still use the ChatGPTs in the clouds because that is what is readily accessible. These like open source models need some amount of technical background, but I'm hoping for a small resistance.
Yeah, I think it's definitely one of those things where convenience trumps a lot of the other things, right?
Yes.
Like if you think
Yeah.
about it, like I look fondly on the days when we used to have, I don't know if you ever participated in like online forums where you would log in, right?
Yeah.
It's like it's a forum for people that like flying kites. Oh, there's another forum for people that like building like model airplanes or something, right? And you'd go into that forum and you'd have like it's just a forum. You'd go talk to these people, you see threads pop up, people sharing their things, and it's kind of like a very organic um component to it. But with time, maintaining a server is expensive, like paying for it is expensive, paying for domains, paying for like, and there's kind of that overwhelming amount of, well, not, I don't want to say overwhelming, that's kind of overkill on the description of this, but more of like there is a barrier to entry because if you want to host one of those communities, it will cost you. If you want to participate in that community, that means now you have to go in and sign up for an account with that community. You have to be there. You have to, right? And then when things like Facebook came along, all of a sudden, like everything's on Facebook now. There's a Facebook group. You don't need to go outside of Facebook. Just go to Facebook. And I think that's a bit of a shame that that's how it ended up because I like I don't use Facebook. Like I don't. And I sometimes you run into like, oh, I want to find somebody that sells something. It's like go to Facebook Marketplace. Like,
Mm.
really? Do I have to? Right? Like, oh, you have to find this community. They're on Facebook. And like nowhere else outside of Facebook. Like I can't find them anywhere else, right? And that centralization, I think, is not really good. Like I'm
I
not that
agree.
big of a fan of it. Like I think it's the idea of one entity being in control of like payments and communications and group membership and all this stuff. It's just not good. It's not good for the ecosystem, right? Like, and we know this from nature because like diversity in an ecosystem strengthens that ecosystem. If you have a one central point of failure, that's one central point of failure. That's bad.
I fully agree with this. I I've also been thinking a lot about like RIP to the free, open, decentralized web. I think that, I mean, this is something that's been a problem even before AI came
Oh, of
along.
course, yeah.
Yeah, but it's interesting that you covered the technical aspect of it. But I do agree with you about the convenience of like I know that Google AI overview is going to give me wrong things, but it's still it's so convenient. I um, and Something that recently I've been really being aware of is the term like cognitive offloading, and I think this was a term that existed before all the LMs, but now I think I just recently learned it in the context of ChatGPT of like the uh, how easy and tempting it is to offload all of the hard thinking to ChatGPT or any of the similar. And I noticed this about myself when I was like, oh, if I make my own, if I build my own local AI setup, where because my biggest concern with all of these is data privacy. So, like, if I make my own local contained version where I don't have to worry about data privacy and I don't have to worry about, what all these big tech companies are learning about me. Like, Google already knows everything about me, but like, I don't want all the other ones to know everything about me too. And I was like, oh, if I make my own local setup, then I can give that instance all of my past writing. And then it would, then I can like have it write my blog posts for me, presumably based on my own tone of voice. And then I had to do a double take because I was like, wait, hold on. Um, I'm I'm now, and I had to do a double take because I was like, oh, I've always found writing hard, so I don't want to do it. So let me get something else to do it. But writing is hard because we have to process information and and organize it in a way that is helpful for others. That's a really important skill that a lot of us are losing. And it reminded me of another thing, which is I don't know if you've seen websites in, like, let's say like Japanese websites or Chinese websites, and they just have like, even on their front page, or old Yahoo. I don't know if you remember how it's so much information density. Sometimes I see my parents go to a Chinese website that they frequent, and it's like walls and walls of text, but they know exactly where to navigate. And I think about how I've lost that ability because I'm so used to Google being like, let me design for you like where to look and how to access information.
Let me give you an AI summary, right? And
Yeah.
this is like, yeah, no, I'm 100%, 100% that. And this is because I I think people kind of this reminds me of that tweet that came up like a few days back as well. Like I like that we're referencing so much of the stuff that's just like people wrote about and people tweeted about because it's so like relevant to all this stuff. But like somebody had tweets like, yeah, life hack of reading like 30 books a week or something. Like I asked ChatGPT to summarize the book and it gave me the bullet points. Like, but you did not read the book. Like that's like
Yeah.
you're kind of like, sure, I can ask it to summarize, give me the 5 bullet points of like some book that I decided to read, and it'll give me that, but it's like, but that's not reading the book. You're missing the point, right? Because like reading the book is its own joy. There's its own joy in kind of going through the story and kind of drawing your own conclusions and seeing like, this doesn't make sense. Like sometimes you'd be reading a book on a technical topic or something that's more kind of scientific and you're like, okay, I don't get it. Let me go start looking for some other source that maybe explain this, right? Like I had this a lot of times for me where you have to go through this process of like, you have this cognitive loop of saying, I want to understand this better. I want to understand this better. I don't need 5
Hmm.
bullet points because that's not learning. That's basically like, oh, great. Now I know marketing because I got these 5 bullet points on marketing from this book. Like, it's not the same. Like, I don't know. And then for things like writing a blog post, I I also fully agree with you because there's kind of this cognitive effort that you put in into like, let me try to distill my thoughts into something that makes sense. Okay, like this, let me look at this doesn't make any sense, and AI can still be very helpful in that context. I put myself in a position where sometimes you can write a blog post and then prompt it and say, let's say you are data visualization extraordinaire Shirley Wu. You are reading my blog post about data visualization. Critique it as if you're going through the
Oh, I
lens,
like
right?
that.
And you get this kind of feedback loop of like, oh, here's where you did not really explain. It's like, okay, this is great. Like I have this kind of almost like a virtual buddy, as overloaded term, and just we talked about like it's not your friend, and here we are. But like it can be helpful to refine my process, but I am not necessarily offloading my thinking to some other system. Like I still think through it, I still write it out, I still compose it, and then I was like, and now I want feedback. Give me feedback.
I really, really appreciate that. I was, because along the lines of like, what are my boundaries? Both ethical, but also from like I don't want to cognitive offload too much. And I fully agree with you in that like writing is it's really difficult, but also really beautiful in a similar way, I think, to teaching, because I feel like it really, really helps solidify how we think about something. I think it really, every time I write, it furthers my understanding on something or an understanding of myself. And so that's something that I never want to give up to our um, anything, to any AI. But I do think that, um, uh, if I do a stream of consciousness writing and then I ask it for help with like reorganizing it, or I think that the biggest place that I would get a lot of help from is to edit it into something, um, like edit it so that I'm not rambling, edit it for concision in my own voice. Uh, that's where I see a lot of value. And um, something else that I've really enjoyed thinking about is I had a few months ago attended a panel discussion that included a creative director from Anthropic. And when asked the question of what advice would you give to people as they adopt AI more and more into their lives? And I really, really liked what he said, which was define where your sacred space is that AI is not allowed to enter. And he said, for me, music making will always be my passion. Music making and performing will always be my passion, and that is something that um and that is a place where I will never let AI help me with any part of the process. um so I think a lot also about like, where is my sacred space?
That's a very good framing too, and because I think through the lens now that you mention it of like for me, if I have to write code, like we're gonna step back into tech for a second. If
Oh
I have to
yeah.
write code, I would very much prefer to have an AI assistant that can help me write a bunch of this code because I'm in the business of solving problems for customers, whoever, right? Like, oh, I need an app that I need a script that is going to help me like organize my GitHub repos and tag them. I don't want to do this manually, right? Like, hey, AI, like, I don't know, Claude Code or whatever, like, write me a bash script that can do all these things and verify that the script works and make sure that the repos are not like I give it basically some specification instructions, go build this. And then I will still apply a good degree of my coding knowledge to see and look at the code and be like, okay, no, this is not what I want. This is not what right. But you kind of steer to that. But some of this is offloaded. At the same time, I guess you can say like I'm dangerous enough that I know some of the stuff where I can say, no, this is not how the API should actually work. You're returning a lot of private information that you should not be returning in that call, right? Like you're equipped with the knowledge and you're using this as almost like an augmentation thing. Like I had a blog post where I wrote basically like this is like your mech suit, right? Like the mech suit still requires you to be able to
To operate
control
it.
it and properly control it. And how do you manage it? Because you're going to cause a lot of damage without it if you don't. Like you just having a mech suit is not giving you superpowers. It's how you can actually control it. And so this is similar to that. But you're absolutely right that there's certain things where I do not want, like I do not use it to generate art. I don't. Like I like drawing. I bought like a Wacom tablet that I just like doodling on. Like
Ooh,
I'm not good at
yeah.
it by any stretch. I'm sure like you toss a few prompts and it can generate something like a million times better, but that's not the point. Like this to me is the thing that I enjoy, that brings me joy, that I actually want to learn how to do right for myself. Like this is the to your concept of like that sacred space. This is that. I don't mind AI writing code and like summarizing the transcripts of our podcast so I can easily say like, you know, for accessibility reasons, like somebody that is hard of hearing that they see this podcast right now launching is like, well, I can't listen to it. But boom, there's a transcript that got generated the moment it got published. Like that's freaking amazing. That's amazing technology. And like there's a lot of positive uses. Like for people listening to this, this is not an anti-AI podcast or rent by any
Yes.
stretch, right? Like because it's very easy to make the person like, oh, you just hate AI. Like, no, I don't. I use it. Like I am on a steering committee for a project that is actually like invested in making sure that AI happens responsibly, right? But with all these things, it's important to acknowledge that there are drawbacks. There's very real drawbacks that need thinking about. Like, what are we going to do about it?
Yeah, and I think it's what you said, the responsibly, use responsibly. That I think is what we're talking about. Is like, I think AI can be a very powerful tool in both directions. And then how do we make sure that we are using it in a conscientious way? And also I think it's that the sacred space is different for everyone. Um, and so I'm not here to, judge or make anyone feel bad about what their sacred space or not sacred space is.
With this change happening quite a bit, like, and again, the changes by the day, like we see news popping in left and right about AI this, AI that. So it's hard to even follow for somebody in the space, let alone for somebody that is outside the space, like a lot of folks are. How do you see this impacting your job and the things that you've been doing with visualizations, with bringing that storytelling through data and storytelling through art? Is it that augmentation engine? Like, do you feel like it's going to save you time?
Yes and no. I think that Actually, mostly no. um, and so the cheeky answer is that I like to joke sometimes that the only reason why I still have job security is because our field is so niche that the big tech companies haven't, bothered to train their models on what makes uh, what we do. They haven't figured out the core of what we do, and so I don't feel like my job is at any sort of a threat just yet. Um, and also, I think it's that what can be automated and what can be, what can be like, what is the majority of the examples out there that these models can be trained on are, I think, generic enough. They're like the dashboards and all, like putting different sort of charts into different sorts of dashboards, that that's never been how I frame my service to my clients. The way that I have always kind of my competitive strength has always been in creating custom solutions, thoughtful custom solutions for clients, that can't that where the dashboards and out of box solutions are not working for them. So in that way, I had a friend ask me if I feel threatened by AI in my work, and my immediate answer was no, because like it can get the job 80% done really well, but where I specialize in that last 20%. Um, and I don't feel threatened by AI. I feel excitingly threatened by, that's a weird phrase, but like, I think it's a good threat to feel, is that unlike when I started 10 years ago, when there were so few of us freelancing in this field, there's now more and more supply of really talented creators, developers, designers in this field, trying to make sense of how do we effectively communicate data. It's a really exciting problem to have, where now that the supply is more, how do I make sure that I keep standing out amongst this like talented group of people, so that clients will still come to us and choose us for what we do.
That's actually a very good point because it ties into that differentiation in the age of AI. And for a lot of folks, like if your job is just slinging code like HTML, CSS, just basic like CRUD apps, right? Like, oh, it's going to be a dashboard for your like SQLite database. Like that job is gone. Like I would make a prediction that if this is the differentiator, that the AI will do that better. And I've seen it do it. Like sometimes, like I for myself would just ask, like, I need a dashboard for this data, like query this database for me and and it does it really freaking well, which is great. And where the differentiation on a personal level comes in is exactly what you said. It's a lot of this high agency and the capability of like breaking out of your own box, of saying, what is the thing that is so good about you that the AI cannot do? And for a lot of these things, is like you said, you have a sense of taste, which I think is irreplaceable. Like, do you think AI is going to create the next iPhone the way that like Steve Jobs put his, like, all the criticism of Steve Jobs aside, like he had a vision, he had a specific opinion and taste about how things should have been done. And that taste got executed on, and this is what we have today in some shape or form. Right. Like that taste drove a lot of these things. And having that taste, because look at it, there's many more phones than iPhones before, right? You had all the Nokias and Ericssons and Motorola's and everything, and none of them had even close to the same sensibility about what customers actually want, right? And I think that is going to be key in this age of being able to look at this and say, what is a differentiator? What can I do differently in a way that, like, it's not just about slinging code, it's about actually like painting a story. It's about making an engaging experience. It's about having people kind of captivated by it, and not necessarily something that's just like, oh, hey, like, look, a bunch of boxes on the screen. That's it. Because that stuff is going to be like extremely easy to do.
So let me actually edit my previous answer of no a little bit. I do think you're absolutely right in that. I do think that it has sped things up in terms of data analysis of like as a launching point of like how do I explore the data and like as a way to like pinpoint into where in the data set should we concentrate on, and then having that as a foundation to work off of has definitely like decrease the amount of time up front. Um, but also, I think even more than that, what I found really, really helpful that what AI has, this wave of AI tools has enabled is that I've had to become really intentional about what we do as a studio. Like, what are the services that we offer? What is our competitive mode? What is our differentiation? I think that I was really, really lucky in that when I started in 10 years ago, because there weren't as many of us, I just got to make what I wanted to make and then put that out there. And then there were clients that were willing to invest in that. Um, and clients are much more discerning now, rightfully, and they think a lot more now about like ROI and what are they going to get, because they have access to so many more tools that can get them 80% of the way there. So in the past year or past half year, I've been doing a lot of like digging and trying to figure out what are our like trying to figure out how to go forward with our studio and client practice in a way that is intentional.
There's a lot of uncertainty, but also a lot of excitement about what's to come. I think the technology is moving fast. I think there's going to be changes, and the best we can do is figure out how do we adapt to them, right? And that adaptability, I think that adaptability, taste, high agency are going to be the basically key to success in my opinion. I think that's very important to develop that and then build that in and augment yourself with AI tools where it is fitting. On that note, I think that this podcast brought a lot of insights and a lot of thinking material for a lot of folks listening to this. Right, it's something that you can digest. Don't summarize this with AI. Actually, listen to it and digest it. Don't get yourself a 30-second 5 bullet point. I'm watching you. So, Shirley, question for you. So, given the trajectory that we are headed in, what would be another piece of unconventional advice? Because I asked you last time that you would say for folks to think about, like not necessarily follow, but maybe like even like think about and see like what can you do to build that personal moat for yourself? Because it's one of
Mm.
those things that I think it's very undefined in our space because we don't often think about this, especially for folks that are not working for themselves, right? Folks that are working at some
Mhm.
company, you don't usually think about a personal moat. What's your personal career moat? But I think that's an important concept that we kind of alluded to. What can folks do to build that out for them?
Ooh, okay. So I love that you always end on such a good, unexpected question. Um, Okay, so personal moat. I'm going to still kind of answer this from my perspective of client practice and studio and competitive moat. But recently, we started at our studio. We started taking a business boot camp, and I recently read something from the our facilitator of the boot camp, and he had written about picking a niche. And because I think a lot of times when we talk about competitive moat and like we're told to like figure out our niche and hyper focus on that. And I really like what he wrote. He said, "You don't pick your niche; it picks you. Your niche already exists. It's not out there; it's in here, in your past experiences, your work history, your wins, your referrals, your inbox, and to uncover it, audit your past work." Which ones got you the best results, which ones gave you the most energy, and spot the recurring patterns of like what industries, what problems, types of clients that keep showing up for a reason, and then double down on your unfair advantages. The work that feels the easiest for you but hard for others is the clue. Your niche isn't out there in a brainstorm. It's not a decision to make, it's a discovery. So stop looking outward and dig inward. So yeah, my answer to your question today is not my own words, but his name is Dan Wall, so it's Dan's words. But that advice really resonated with me when I saw it like 2 days ago.
Double down on your unfair advantages. I think that's underestimated, extremely valuable advice, because sometimes folks don't even think they have unfair advantages. And like you have to go and figure out what that is for you, right? Whether it's public speaking, writing, design, being able to put stories through visualization as yourself, right? Like there's a lot of strengths that come naturally to a lot of people that they don't realize that actually puts you way, way ahead of a lot of others.
And it could be a perspective based on your own background of like I have a perspective because of my migrant experiences um but I love this that on this is the note that I want to end on, which is um it takes a lot of hard work to figure out where our unfair advantages is. No ChatGPT, Claude, or Gemini is going to have that answer ready for us spitting out.
Good note to end this on. Shirley, thank you so much for being on the show. We'll include all the links to your blog posts, to the articles that we discussed in the show notes. So check those out. That's in the video description or the blog post. And if you are listening to the show, wherever you're listening, make sure that you are also following Shirley. Where can they follow you? Is it LinkedIn? Is it shirleywu.studio?
Yeah, so my website is at shirleywu.studio. I talk about my client related things on LinkedIn, which is, I think, Shirley XYWoo, I think. And then Instagram is where I post more on the art side, is also shirleywu.studio.
And as always, links to the show notes. Click on them, follow Shirley, and thank you again for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me again. Thank you, Dan.